Hello and welcome to my channel. A while ago I made a video where I showed some of my old graphite pencil drawings, and a lot of people found that video interesting, so I decided to do the same thing with my colored pencil drawings. I picked some of the better colored pencil drawings that I did a few years back, and these aren't going to be the ones that you can see on my channel because these were all made before I actually started recording videos for YouTube. And also I left out some of the drawings where I combined pastel pencils and colored pencils, or where I used pastels more heavily. So these are just going to be my older colored pencil drawings, which you can't see on this channel. I'm going to talk about them a little bit and maybe critique some of them and talk about what I could have done better and some other things. Now let's go. And the first drawing is going to be this drawing of Elvis Presley, and this was the first colored pencil drawing that I did as far as I can remember, and for my level of skill at the time it turned out really well. In fact, it turned out a lot better than I expected. Now you have to remember that at the time I wasn't an inexperienced artist. I had already done many portraits with graphite pencils, but the thing is that I was completely new to colored pencils. And if you look closer, you can see some of the flaws of my technique because I had problems with blending and layering those colors. But the thing that kind of saved me and made this portrait so good, I think, was the fact that I worked off a really good reference photo, and it had a nice lighting and those nice shadows on the left side of the face, or his right side of the face, which kind of helped me to create depth and volume. And I was also pretty happy with the way the hair turned out. So overall it was a pretty good portrait, although obviously I was kind of inexperienced with colored pencils. Now the second drawing that I want to show you is this smaller portrait of Mr. Bean. I wanted to draw Rowan Atkinson making this goofy expression, and this was a smaller size portrait than the Elvis one. The Elvis one was about 9 times 12 inches. This one was about half that size, I think. I'm not really sure. But anyway, it was a pretty detailed portrait nonetheless, and maybe I even put a little bit too much texture on the face, so I could have maybe blended that a little bit more or burnished it, I don't know. But it turned out pretty good. The third drawing that I want to show you is this drawing of a butterfly. And this is a very nice colorful drawing. But here I try to do a blurry background like I did once with graphite pencils, where I also did a drawing of a butterfly. But here it was a little bit more difficult to do, so you can still see some of that texture, but to remove that texture I kind of had to do a lot of burnishing, and I'm not really sure how well that looks when seen from up close, but there you have it. This was the best I could do at the time. Nowadays I would probably do such a thing with pastels, because they are a lot better for this type of drawing where you need an out of focus blurry background with some soft transitions. The next drawing is inspired by The Lord of the Rings, and this is Elrond. And the interesting thing about this drawing was that initially I did it as a graphite pencil drawing. But then I had an idea, why shouldn't I add a touch of color to my graphite pencil drawing? Because I felt that it was done with lighter graphite pencils, and so I decided to go over them with colored pencils. And this is how it turned out. I think the background looks pretty nice, and the colored pencils actually combined pretty well with graphite. They allowed me to achieve some nice looking tones, so that wasn't such a bad idea after all. The next drawing is an animal portrait, and this is a drawing of a leopard. And this was a pretty detailed colored pencil drawing at the time, and One of the things that I did really well, I think, were the eyes. The spots are also pretty good, but I think that because I was new to colored pencils and because I mostly use cheaper colored pencils, the colors are not as rich, and I think the fur, these darker or yellowish parts of the fur, should have been even darker, so my subject would probably have a little more depth and volume. But the background was done pretty well. I achieved a nice blurry look, and I also have drawing progression for this one as well. I'm going to show you this drawing progression where you can see 3 stages. At the time I wasn't recording videos, but I would occasionally take photos of my progress, and this is what it looked like. Now the next drawing is a drawing of Keira Knightley, and this is based on a scene from the movie King Arthur. It was a decent movie, and I liked this scene, and I thought that it was really good to draw. Keira, by the way, played Guinevere here in this movie, and I think it was one of her first roles. And it was certainly one that made her famous, as far as I can recall. And like I said, I really wanted to do this scene, but when I googled it, I realized that some people had already done the same thing in graphite pencil, and I was kind of disappointed about that, but I decided to do this in colored pencil. And I think it turned out nice. The drawing has some shortcomings of its own. I think the face could have been a little bit better. Maybe it's a little bit too flat. I should have done a little more shading and pushed the value in certain areas. But I think the effect of those snowflakes that I achieved turned out pretty well. And the next 2 drawings I'm going to show you are drawings of Russell Crowe from the movie Robin Hood, which was again a pretty good movie, and there were certain things that I didn't like about the movie, but I'm not going to get into the details because I'm not a movie reviewer. I'm mostly going to talk about my drawing. So the first drawing was this one, and these were commissioned by a customer from Australia, who is the main reason why I drew so many portraits and drawings of Russell Crowe. And these are the first and probably the only 2, no, these are actually 2 out of the 3 drawings of him that I did in color. And like I said, this is the first one. The thing I like about it is that I did a really good job on the face and the blood, but some parts of it were blurry and I had to simplify them, and I maybe oversimplified them a little bit, like the arrow and the armband and things like that. So these things could have been a little bit better. And here you can also see the drawing progression for this one as well. The other drawing is here, this drawing on a horse, and here I put in a lot of work and detail into the horse as well, and into Robin Hood's armor and clothes as well. The only thing that I don't really like now that I look back is the composition, because I worked off a reference photo that looked almost exactly like this, and I probably should have done something with it so that we can see the top of the head as well, and maybe more of the background. I don't know, maybe I would have moved everything a little bit to the center, but it's a good enough drawing for my experience and level of skill at the time. And this is the drawing progression for the second one with the horse. So let's move on. There's going to be, by the way, there's going to be another drawing of Russell Crowe here, but we'll get there in a few minutes. So the next drawing is a drawing of Brad Pitt in the role of Achilles in the movie Troy. The best part of this drawing, I think, is of course the helmet, where I put a lot of work to make it look like metal. So I created a lot of texture. As for the rest of it, I probably should have used some darker pencils on the skin and the face to create a little more depth and to create some darker values here you can also see the drawing progression for this one as well. And the next drawing is drawing of an Ice Age character, the squirrel Scrat, and his acorn. I wanted to capture his facial expression with a twitching eye when he realizes that he is going to lose the acorn again. So it's a fun little drawing. So now we have a couple of drawings of basketball players. This is Michael Jordan with a simple black background, and originally in my reference photo the jersey was white, but I wanted to draw him in his black Bulls jersey, so I made that change, and I liked his position of his body and his expression in this picture, and I think I did a decent job on the forehead and the drops of sweat and the highlights, but you can see some of the texture where I tried to blend different colors on around the cheeks and the chin and the neck. So I don't really know how much better I could have done there, because obviously these are some of the limitations of colored pencils. And you can also see the drawing progression for this one as well in several stages. And this is my drawing of the late Kobe Bryant. Again, a simple black background. I drew him shooting the ball. I did a nice job on the jersey, and I probably could have used a little bit darker pencils on his skin. The next drawing is a drawing of a German Shepherd, so another animal portrait. A pretty detailed one where I combined several different browns and ochres to create the realistic appearance of the fur. The next drawing is a smaller size drawing of a bug on a leaf. It's an iridescent bug, and I also did a lot of shading on the drop of water to make it look realistic. I wanted this drawing to look kind of almost 3D, kind of realistic, but I was mostly interested in the bug and its nice colors. The next drawing is a drawing of a horse. This was a larger commissioned portrait of a horse. It was a racehorse named Trotty, and this one was 11 times 14 inches in size. It was done entirely in colored pencil, and I remember that it took quite a bit of time for me to finish, because obviously colored pencils are really slow to work with, and they don't blend well at all unless you use solvents or some burnishing methods. So you can see that this animal's coat with a lot of these shiny glistening areas and highlights was probably difficult to draw, and took a little bit of time for me to make his body and anatomy and muscles look really realistic. And I also did a slightly blurry background with some suggestions of trees and bushes in the back. And here you can also see the drawing progression. And now we have another portrait, a detailed one. This is a portrait of Hugh Laurie as Dr. House. An interesting character to draw, although I didn't really follow the series too much. I just watched a few episodes here and there. But like I said, an interesting character to draw, and I tried my best to make it as realistic as possible. I really wanted a more detailed, larger portrait with colored pencils, and that's what I did. I put in a lot of work on the hair and the stubble on his beard. Now we're going to have a look at a double portrait of Russell Crowe and Ryan Gosling from the movie Nice Guys. And this was again a larger drawing, about 14 inches in length, and it turned out pretty well. I think this is one of my best colored pencil drawings. It has a lot of details, lots of nice textures, and I actually did this with a fairly limited number of pencils. The only shortcoming, as far as I can tell, is the fact that I think that Ryan had a tattoo in this movie, and there was a tattoo in my reference. I think it was either on his hand or his forearm. I don't quite remember, but I remember that I forgot to put in the tattoo. The rest of it I'm pretty satisfied with. And you can also see the drawing progression for this fairly large and complex drawing. The movie was kind of mediocre, in my opinion. And now we have another drawing of Elvis. This one was a little bit larger in size, and here I used a little bit of pastel for the background, but the reason why I included the drawing here among the colored pencil drawings was because all of the subject was done in colored pencils. And I remember that the face and the hair went mostly smoothly, but I had some problems with the shadow under his head and neck. And I also had some problems with his shirt and these transitions between darker and lighter values. So I did a lot of burnishing there, but somehow eventually I managed to make it look good. And here's the drawing progression for this one as well. Here's another drawing of Michael Jordan, another colored pencil drawing of him, and this one was a really large portrait with his head covering most of, or his face covering most of the paper. In this picture he is posing with his 6 rings. A very detailed portrait, and I did a lot of layering, as you can see, of various browns and blacks to achieve some of the tones on his face, and I did the best that I could. Maybe certain parts of his face have a little bit too much texture, and I probably should have worked on that, but overall a very detailed and realistic portrait. And the next portrait is a drawing of Brad Pitt from the movie Legends of the Fall. Here again, like in the Elvis drawing, I used pastel for the background, but the rest of it was done in colored pencil. And what I really like here is the contrast between the light side and the dark side. The light side is sunlit and almost white, and the rest of it is a little bit darker. Here the biggest challenge for me, I have to admit, was getting the right color for his blonde hair. So I had to combine several different colors to achieve that color, but I'm also pretty happy with the way the face came out. And you can also see the drawing progression for this one as well. The next drawing is a drawing of Tupac, and I have 2 of those. These are also 2 larger colored pencil drawings. I don't really know much about Tupac and his music. I am not a big fan of rap music. It was just a commission, but it was a large and detailed drawing that I wanted to share with you. And here's the drawing progression. And here's the second one. A lot of contrast here, a lot of these shiny metallic details. And as for the tattoos, I did the best that I could. I obviously had to improvise a little bit and simplify certain things because I couldn't really make out all of the details, but like I said, I did the best that I could. And here's the drawing progression for the second one. And now we have a drawing of a football player. This is Terry Bradshaw, and I did a nice work on his helmet and the shirt, I think, the jersey rather. The face probably could have used a little bit more shading and some darker colors. Some parts of it look a little bit flat, but I really liked his expression and his distant look in the reference photo, so I think overall it turned out nice. And here you can see just a little bit of the drawing progression, because those are the only ones, the only pictures I took. Now the other drawing of a football player is a drawing of Ben Roethlisberger. His last name is a mouthful. I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing it correctly. But this one was even more detailed. I think even even more realistic, because I did even more shading and more detailed and put in more detail and texture on the face and this beard and things like that. And also of course the helmet was fairly complex as well. Here you can see the drawing progression for this one. These were two large drawing of American football players. Now we have a Harry Potter drawing. This is a drawing of Severus Snape, and I did this one on grey toned paper because I thought that the colors would stand out nicely. It turned out okay. I'm pretty happy with this portrait. I did a similar thing in this next drawing, which is a drawing of an owl on a cactus. This one I did as a present for my sister, and I had a simple grey background with some colors on my subject in the foreground. Now we have a couple of provocative drawings. The first one is a drawing of Salma Hayek from the movie From Dusk Till Dawn, in her outfit that she danced in the movie. The drawing has some interesting colors, kind of grayish, cool colors, so I tried my best to make it look similar to what it looked like in the movie. And here's a drawing progression. Several photos I took during the drawing process. And the next drawing is a drawing of Dolly Parton in lingerie. I here did a simple background, and the best part I think of this drawing is her transparent gown and her lingerie, where I did a nice work. But as for the skin tones, I probably could have shaded the area around the neck and the face a little bit more. So some of it is a little bit flat to me now. It probably could have been a little bit better. And here's the drawing progression. And now I'm going to show you a smaller sized but very detailed portrait. This is a drawing of Jeremy Brett as Sherlock Holmes in the famous British TV series. This was the best Sherlock Holmes in my opinion. I already done a portrait of him in graphite pencil. And this was done obviously with mostly with a black colored pencil, but I did a nice job on his face as well. The only thing that I don't really like about the drawing is the fact that it was too small. I probably should have drawn it on a larger format. And finally, here's a nice drawing of a brown lab. So a pet portrait, because I did a lot of those as well. That will be all for this video. I hope you enjoyed this retrospection. Lots of interesting drawings here. So I'm going to see you in the next video. I may do another one like this one where I reminisce about some of my older drawings, because a lot of them you won't get to see. Because I did a lot of these drawings, hundreds of them, before I actually started recording for YouTube. But that will be all for now. Thank you for watching, and bye.